Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and expands our base, which of course is our goal. I want to talk with you today seriously about charges leveled about who won the election in 2020 and the question of election interference in 2024. There are many issues which we should address on this podcast, but I feel compelled to talk about this because, frankly, it's just, ridiculous. Both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance continue to talk about the fact that Donald Trump won the election of 2020. They are both insisting that election denial is legitimate. So I want to be very clear. Donald Trump lost the election of 2020. Joe Biden won the election of 2020. And for Trump and Vance to continue to advance the idea that, in fact, Donald Trump won should be enough reason to vote against them. One of the things I treasure about this country is its stability, its commitment to democracy. And when you have a former president of the United States and a man who would be vice president of the United States continuing to say that Donald Trump won the election denialism, I think it's appalling. Now, let me remind you that in 2020, J.D. Vance was willing to stand on the floor wherever he stood and say that, in fact, Donald Trump won the election. He made very clear in his statements that he believed that to be true, and he continues to do so. You heard it in the debate the other night. He would not answer the direct question, did Donald Trump win the election? No, he deflected to censorship. It's astounding to me and completely wrong. And you and I need to address this directly. Make no mistake, Donald Trump lost in 2020. And that is what matters. Now let's talk about election interference. I talked briefly about Mr. Smith's filing, in which he describes all of the abuses of power, the attempt to subvert the American election of 2020, committed by Donald Trump. Donald Trump is still endeavoring to have all of those thoughts suppressed and thrown out of court. And he is committed that if he is elected on November 5th, and if he takes office on January 20th, he will dismiss all of those charges. Let us be clear. There was an attempt by Donald Trump to overthrow the election of 2020. Some of you are saying, but John, why do you care about this? Why do I care? Because the stability of this country, the greatness of this country, hinges on our democratic processes. Now let's talk about election interference. The charge is made that Mr. Smith's charges are direct election interference in the election of 2024, as if Mr. Smith brought the charges, or these are brand new, that this would be an October surprise. No. This has been going on now in the courts repeatedly, where Donald Trump has said, I won, he lost, and now the charge that in 2024, that there is something wrong with this election process. All of the secretaries of state from all 50 states have made the statement that their processes are fair and complete. To see now the charge made that because Donald Trump, clearly in my mind, tried to break the law in 2020, that somehow bringing those charges in 2024 are election interference. This case should have gone to court long ago. The Supreme Court ruling on the question of presidential power is what prevented it from going. Now, the question is what Donald Trump did in his official capacity? And of course, the answer is no. It was as the head of his political party. It was a campaign effort. But the attempt to impugn the 2024 election before a single ballot has been cast is, to me, enough reason to oppose Donald Trump. It is very interesting that yesterday, Kamala Harris was less of an issue. What was an issue was Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney standing together. Now, let me say a word about Liz Cheney. I believe she is a profile in courage. And what they discussed yesterday, together, arm in arm, was how the election of Donald Trump would be a disaster for American democracy. Liz Cheney has made it her personal commitment to do everything she can to prevent Donald Trump from ever sitting in the White House. She believes, and she has said it often, that he is a threat to democracy, that he is a threat to our country, and she is right. Now, it's true that on many issues, Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney don't agree. But what they do agree on is the fundamental bottom line. I have people who say to me, well, John, I'm going to vote for Trump because I agree with his policies. No, you don't. You may agree with issue stands, but you don't agree, I hope you don't agree, that Donald Trump's claim that the elections in America are rigged is true. That is the issue. That is the fundamental issue. That is the issue which matters. Let's be clear. Donald Trump is, in Liz Cheney's words, unfit to be president of the United States. And J.D. Vance, because he defends Donald Trump on these issues, is, in my judgment, also unfit to be vice president of the United States. This election will determine whether or not we believe as people, as the American people, whether we believe that American democracy worked in 2020 and whether it will work in 2024. Make no mistake, there are a lot of things on the line. There are a lot of issues to debate and discuss. But can you believe that on the eve of the 2024 election, we are debating who won in 2020? Can you believe that with little more than 1 million votes cast already and November 5th fast approaching, when millions of Americans will go to the polls and vote, that we are debating whether or not this election will be fair? No, enough is enough. Let the American people stand up and be clear. Donald Trump lost in 2020 because the election was fair. And in 2024, the election will be fair again. Oh, by the way, he says if he wins, he'll accept the result. But if he doesn't, well, we'll go through this all again. Now, Donald Trump is a disgrace, and the American people need to understand that he is a danger to American democracy. 3 cheers for Liz Cheney. She has the courage to stand up and say so, and frankly, I'm saying it right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. Thanks again for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, the goal of this podcast. And yes, indeed, you can interact with me on Facebook and on LinkedIn. My deep appreciation to Gogo Zoger. She is the producer of this program. All right, the weekend is upon us. We will wait and see where we go next week, right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then. Around the Political World with John Rothman is proud to introduce our first sponsor. That's right. We have someone who loves what we do, and I have to tell you, I love what she does. Be Bold America is produced by KSQD, and of course, the person who leads us through these great discussions is none other than Jill Cody. She's an author, a radio personality, and she does one heck of a job of putting into focus major issues, from protecting democracy to our climate. Let me tell you, the topics on the podcast are serious. It's not for the faint of heart, but that's to say the show is for all of us. Be bold in America. In an election year, what can we do to increase discussion, debate, and the rest? I'll tell you what we can do. Listen to Jill Cody as she exposes all of us to the issues. You can tune in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you like to get your shows. So this is John Rothman delighted, pleased, thrilled to endorse Jill Cody's wonderful program, Be Bold, America.